Ok, je vais activer ma caméra pour quelques minutes, puis après ça, vous ne me reverrez pas. Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Je ne m'attendais pas en réalité à devoir faire une petite présentation ici, là, mais bon, on va faire ça un petit peu spontané. Je vous remercie beaucoup d'avoir vouloir assister à la première atelier de l'association. On est bon, dans une première fois, donc on espère que tout va bien fonctionner. Ah tiens, je vois que le dernier participant vient de se joindre, donc tant mieux. Donc tout le monde est ici et j'espère que vous allez bien apprécier et n'hésitez pas si vous avez des suggestions de sujets pour des ateliers subséquents, faites-nous en part, on va tâcher de mettre ça sur pied autant que possible. La dernière chose que je voudrais peut-être faire, c'est remercier évidemment beaucoup nos commanditaires. VIA nous offre gratuitement l'utilisation de cet outil qui est extrêmement efficace et performant. Et aussi, M. Jeff Stafflin, vous le voyez parmi les participants, c'est l'interprète qui lui aussi commandite cet atelier-là et ce qui nous permet d'avoir de l'anglais, du français vers un sens, mais on apprécie énormément, c'est un travail extrêmement exigeant de faire une interprétation comme ça. Donc, j'espère que tout va bien fonctionner. Grosso modo, je vous rappelle un petit peu comment ça devrait fonctionner de façon générale. C'est amical, hein, alors c'est pas une formule très rigide, mais grosso modo, il y a une présentation au début de 10 à 15 minutes ou à quelques minutes près. Et s'ensuit une période de questions, d'échanges. Et essentiellement, on espère qu'il va y avoir là un échange d'informations et de discussions assez intéressantes. Donc, pour la première présentation, ça va être Mme Cheryl McLean qui va commencer. Et puis ensuite, lorsque ça s'est terminé, M. Chamberlain va faire sa présentation et il y aura une autre période de questions. Donc, je pense que c'est pas mal tout ce qui est important de dire pour l'instant. Et je vais passer immédiatement la parole à Cheryl pour la première présentation. Juste un petit détail en passant, ici, il commence à faire un très gros orage et j'espère juste qu'on ne manquera pas d'électricité en cours de route. Mais à part de ça, je pense que tout va bien fonctionner. Donc, bon atelier tout le monde. La parole est à Cheryl.
Que ton micro n'est pas activé. Cheryl, I think your microphone is not in use. You have to click on the button so that your microphone becomes green.
Je peut-être juste une petite précision ici. Tout le monde parle en français. Il y a l'interprète qui parle en anglais à Cheryl. Donc, on peut tous s'adresser en français par via. On n'a toujours pas de son pour Cheryl ici.
Can you hear me now?
Here now.
It's okay now? Yes, okay, good stuff.
Yes.
We're good to go then, okay. Whoops, let's get the right slides up here. Okay, my topic is working with a content specialist who is resistant to change, and I think we've all dealt with this particular issue. And so I thought what I would do this morning is to set us in the mood for this particular topic. I have a very short video. The video is in English, but there are French subtitles on it, and I'm sorry there's a little bit of an ad first that we kind of have to live with, but we'll see if we can get it going fairly quickly here.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 wild short hairs. That's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning. Right here. If you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds.
You see the movies, you hear the stories. I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
EDS, managing the complexities of e-business.
Okay, I hope that got everybody in the mood to talk about working with content specialists. My subtitles disappeared. I hope yours were there. So working with content specialists really can be like herding cats, but we're all instructional designers, so who says you can't herd cats? We can do this. Like cats, content specialists are really highly intelligent and they're very independent. Most of the specialists with whom I've worked are working in their own classrooms, very independently. No one ever comes in to check on what they're doing, and they're used to doing what they want to do when they want to do it. They're also very highly skilled in their field, and sometimes they are extremely resistant to change. So how do you deal with a content specialist who's resistant to change? I was director of the distance program at the University of Manitoba for a number of years, and some of the complaints that I heard from content specialists that were particularly resistant were things like, they're telling me what to do in my own classroom. They were independent and they resented an instructional designer coming in and saying, well, I don't think you're doing this right and you should be doing it this way, and so on. Some of them were saying things like, what I'm doing in my classroom right now works fine, and there's absolutely no reason for me to change it. They were comfortable with what they're doing. Others were just plain worried about it. They haven't been sufficiently prepared to do it. And others complained, your instructional designer is not listening to me, and I'm not part of the process. So as a director, those were the kinds of problems that the content specialists were coming to me with when they were particularly resistant. Over the years, and I've been an instructional designer for over 30 years, to me the key to making this whole thing work is the relationship that develops between you, the instructional designer, and your content specialist. And this relationship is a really good predictor of how successful this project is going to be. And if you can develop a really good relationship and a good partnership, to me, that's key in helping you to overcome the resistance that a content specialist might actually have. So, what constitutes an effective working partnership? One of the biggest things is mutual respect on both sides. And some of the issues that I know we encountered at the University of Manitoba was the content specialists sometimes did not see us as full partners in the process with skills that complement his or hers. They were so used to being independent in their own classroom and within their own research that they didn't really see us as a full partner. So that was a big issue. The roles and the goals for everybody really have to be nailed down early so everybody knows what's going on and all the parties have to be committed to it. One of the things that we found happened was some of the content specialists were really not committed to the whole thing. They'd been talked into doing this, weren't sure they wanted to even do it. Your content specialist also really needs to feel comfortable about presenting their own ideas and knowing that they will be seriously considered, that they're not going to be just told what to do, that they're going to be part of the process. So they have to have a really serious input into the change and particularly how that change is going to be managed. And it's important that your content specialist trusts you not to get him or her in beyond what he or she can manage. So sometimes, though, it's really difficult to achieve this partnership. And one of the reasons that I found, and this was from talking to content specialists over the years, was that they often felt that they were being evaluated or judged on their teaching. They were used to being in their classroom alone. Very few of the academics that we worked with ever had anyone come in and even watch what they did, and there was very little feedback other than the student feedback that's given at the end of the course. And suddenly, here's this instructional designer coming in there and watching what they're doing, and someone who's an expert in teaching. So they felt often that they were being evaluated and judged. Most of them lack any kind of formal training in education or teaching or facilitating, and they were frankly intimidated by the instructional designer. Others had been teaching for 30 years or longer and were skilled teachers, and they were worried that their significant teaching skills weren't going to be acknowledged and that they weren't going to be seen to be the expert teacher that they were. And others were new academics with very limited experience and skills that were just plain nervous about the whole thing. Other reasons why your content specialist could be resistant is, in our case, they didn't necessarily choose to participate, but were simply told that this was a task that they had to complete. They already had full plates and more than enough to do, and this task sometimes was added to an already full schedule, but nothing else had been removed, which was a huge barrier. And others lacked skills in the area of change, particularly when we were dealing with technology. And I can't tell you how many times when we were developing an online course, we would be assigned a content specialist from a department who was able to use email and maybe did a little surfing on the web, but that was it. And so this person was very nervous, very scared, and not sure that he or she could do this thing at all. So, where do you start in this kind of a situation? How do you know what your content specialist problem is? Well, you start where you do with any other instructional design project. You start with your analysis component. And that happens a lot, usually during the first meeting. I found that the first meeting can very often make or break a project. If you can get that first meeting off to a good, comfortable start for both of you, you're usually away to the races. You might want to consider having the meeting in their space rather than your space. It's a way to get to know them, to see their surroundings. Always provide some tea or coffee, or juice or whatever that person likes, to set a bit of a social atmosphere for them, to make them more comfortable. And then the key is to spend a lot of time listening and asking questions. Most content specialists really open up about what goes on in their classroom when real interest is shown from someone else about what's happening. They hardly ever get to talk about it because they talk about research, but not very many of them talk about their teaching. The other thing that I found really helped was I would make a visit to the classroom and watch the content specialist teach. And that would give me a good idea of that person's strengths and weaknesses. You have to be very careful when you do that so that the content specialist isn't intimidated by your presence in the room. And it's important that you talk only about their strengths, things that you can build on for the change that you're hoping to implement. Now, some ideas of questions that I ask, and I take lots of notes when I ask these. And these are just some suggestions. I'm sure you have lots of other ideas of questions that you ask as well. I've divided them into two groups: what you really like, what's the positives about their course, and the negatives. And I always start about what they really like about their course. Often that one is really hard for them to talk about. They feel like they're boasting or something, but I persist with that one because it's important to know what they like about their course, so that if you can find a way for the change that you want to implement to enhance what they like, then you're really making progress. Then what works well in their course, and what do the students particularly like? the instructor knows more about those students than anybody else because he or she's been, the content specialist has been working with them usually for a significant period of time. So they can give you lots of information about what works for the students as well. What don't you like about the course? What would you like to improve and what would you like to change are kind of some of my standard questions as well. And spend quite a bit of time probing them. What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? How does this work? Things of that nature so that they can really open up about the course and then while they're talking about that, be looking for ways that the change will either resolve one of those problems or things that they don't like or make it better or enhance what works really well. They have to have a reason to make the change. And it has to be a reason that makes sense to them. And so this is where you can perhaps begin to look for that reason to make the change. And I've already said that. After that first meeting, it's important to follow up and keep your connection going as quickly as possible. Most of us, I know, do send a follow-up email. And one of the things that I discovered a little bit later on when I was doing the follow-up email, that it was really important that not only do I outline their tasks and their deadlines, but that I outline the tasks that I said I would do and my deadlines. That's part of helping them to see us as a partner rather than an overseer. Usually about halfway to the deadline, I do an either phone or email check-in to see how things are going for them. And I usually start with, is there anything I can do to help you? Not, are you on track? But what can I do to help you? Again, to promote the idea that I'm there to help them, that we're partners, that this is something we're doing together. And then I tell them how I'm progressing. So, but you better make sure before you call that you've actually made some progress to keep them moving. And then I check in again a few days before the deadline, just to keep it going. And again, emphasizing what can I do to help you. Other suggestions that you might want to consider to help bring them online if they're resistant. Examples are huge. Providing as many examples that you can possibly have at several levels of implementation. If what you're trying to implement can be complex and you have the ability to perhaps start with small steps and move to more complex things, then I would suggest starting with some of the examples of the smaller portion of the change and then move forward to the more complex, but lots of examples. If you have examples in his or her field, that's even better. Another thing that I try to do is set up what I call slush time. I don't necessarily tell them I've set up slush time with the deadlines, but I try to build in extra time for problems that may occur so that if they do run into some difficulties, then I do have a little bit of leeway to give them some extra time without causing problems to the project. Practice, lots of opportunity for practice, especially if technology is involved in the change. And if you can implement whatever it is that you're implementing in small change, that would really, really help. Coaching is huge. This is when you're actually doing the implementation. If the change is technology and you're, say for example, getting them to use a classroom, such as the classroom that we're using this morning, this isn't a difficult classroom to use. It's really very easy to use. And your content specialists are probably pretty good teachers, and that's comfortable for them too. But when you put the two things together, that's a pretty heavy cognitive load, and that can be pretty rattling. What I like to do with my content specialists in this situation is I attend the first few classes with them, sit beside them, and coach. By this point, we've already established a good partnership. They're comfortable with me, and it's something that we do together. And my rule is, I'll stay with you as long as you need me, and when you're ready to fly on your own, you tell me and I'll go away. Some instructors tell me to go away within the first 10, 15 minutes. Others take a couple of classes before they're comfortable. So it's a way of making them feel safer if you're there. You being there rather than a technology person is less intimidating too. What this comes down to is there's really no magic bullet for being able to get a content specialist who's resistant to do things. You have to kind of play it by ear in many ways, and it comes down to, in my view, to nurturing the partnership through mutual respect, listening, and really getting to know your CS, your content specialist, and providing sufficient guidance and training and support that will fit their needs. And you have to be prepared to compromise. You may not get them to do everything that you want to do, and so maybe this time around you only get a few small steps, next time a few more, and it might be a longer process to actually build what it is that you're trying to do, you're trying to change. Okay, and I think that's the end of my presentation, and I think I'm at about 15 minutes. And so, have you got questions? And if you don't have questions, I have a couple for you.
Pour les gens qui ont des questions, vous pouvez utiliser la main pour demander la parole.
Carol's hand is up. Okay, so do I just click on Carol so she can speak?
Carol may speak. You just have to tell her that you're ready for her question, and she may speak it.
I'm ready for your question.
Ok, ok, merci Cheryl. Je pense que vous m'entendez maintenant.
Yes.
Ok. C'est un petit peu étrange pour moi de parler en français parce que je suis plutôt la réaction de parler en anglais, mais je vais essayer quand même d'articuler quelque chose de logique. Dans ma pratique, moi, ce que je fais, et je ne sais pas si Cheryl, tu as tenté l'expérience aussi, dans la première entrevue, qui est effectivement extrêmement important parce que c'est là qu'on fait qu'on connecte littéralement avec l'expert de contenu. Personnellement, une question que je leur pose toujours, et je voulais avoir ton avis là-dessus, c'est de leur demander, selon elles, c'est quoi le plus gros défi qu'elles ont à rencontrer par rapport à ce cours-là en particulier. Et je les laisse parler à ce niveau-là. J'essaie d'aller le plus loin possible dans ce sens-là. D'après moi, ce que je vois, c'est ça leur montre jusqu'à quel point on est ouvert et qu'on est là pour justement les appuyer dans les parties qui se sentent moins solides, si vous voulez. Et souvent, dans mon cas, ça l'a aidé beaucoup à faire en sorte que l'entente et la relation était bâtie à partir de quelque chose de plus égalitaire. Mais c'est pas une recette, c'est pas quelque chose qui est automatique. Mais souvent, dans mon cas en tout cas, j'ai trouvé ça bénéfique d'utiliser ce genre de processus-là. Je me demandais qu'est-ce que Cheryl en pensait.
I think that's a fabulous question, Carol. I think what you're doing there is you're building the partnership, you're building the relationship by asking them what challenges them the most. And I think you're moving them right away towards the impression that you're there to help them, to assist them. And so I think it's a wonderful question, and I think it does move them well along the way towards forming the partnership with you and recognizing you as a partner, as a full partner in the process. I think that's a wonderful question, and your reasons for doing it are terrific. Other questions? Oh, there's a hand. Okay. Oh, it's Carol.
Okay,
Carol, go ahead.
Hélène speak.
Oh, sorry, it's Hélène. Hélène, please proceed.
Est-ce que je pose ma question en français ou en anglais? Je n'étais pas certaine.
You can ask in whichever language you prefer.
Okay. Okay. Hélène here je suis au Conseil scolaire francophone à Vancouver où la formation à distance se fait au niveau du secondaire. Et quand on travaille avec les spécialistes de contenu, on retrouve les mêmes problématiques, à savoir que le cours qui va être donné en ligne, c'est parfois dans un contexte imposé. Et également, il y a la distinction entre le spécialiste de contenu et la personne qui va enseigner. Ce n'est pas la même personne. Donc, à ce niveau-là, le spécialiste de contenu ne sera pas appelé à enseigner le cours et il y a parfois de la difficulté à amener les enseignants à s'approprier des contenus qui ont été faits par d'autres. Est-ce que vous avez déjà travaillé dans ce contexte-là? Donc, un enseignant qui doit utiliser du matériel développé par un autre spécialiste de contenu.
Yes, that's happened to us on a number of occasions as well, where the person who's developed the course is not necessarily the person that teaches the course. And over again, what happens is the new person that's going to teach the course comes in, they look over the material and they say, well, this isn't how I would do it. Do I have to use this material? Does it have to be done this way? And so on and so forth. And that is an issue. One of the ways that we dealt with that issue is we tried to build in, especially if we knew that this was going to be the case, that the person teaching it would not be the same person as the person developing it. What we tried to do is we tried to build in opportunities where the person who was teaching it would have some flexibility to add their own flavor and some of their own activities to the course. So we would have activities built in where they would have either a choice of activities, or they could choose one of those activities or develop one of their own for the course. If the course was one that used a classroom like this one, it was a little easier because then that person had more flexibility. The teaching person would have more flexibility to make the course more like his or her own course. But I agree, that's a real problem when you run into that particular situation. One of the things we tried to do as well, but it didn't work very often, was we tried to get both the content specialist and the instructor together to talk about the course and what they might want to do with the course, so that they both had some input. But time-wise, that very rarely worked, because either we didn't know who the teacher was going to be at the time we were developing the course, or we just simply couldn't get the two of them together. But I agree, that's a real problem. But the only thing that we could do was to try and find some way to have some flexibility where the person that would be teaching would be able to add some of their own flavor. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks a lot.
Carol,
yeah.
you had...
And it's often the case, as you as you mentioned, it's often the case because you don't know ahead of time who's going to teach the course, and there's some campus where the idea is to maximize the number of courses that a teacher will give, since the content is already all more or less all put together. Obviously, the task of a teacher who teach online tend to be towards maximizing the number of courses they teach in a field. So that's like you say, it's really risky to end up having a disconnection between the teacher and the content. So like you say, what we've done until now is to at least give the teacher the opportunity to develop all the homework and assessment. So the teacher make their own assessment plan.
That's a fabulous idea to allow them to do that. That alone would allow them to make it their own course and put their own flavor on it. And then they'd be comfortable with what it is that they're grading too. And we all know grading is the biggest problem in any course that you're doing. Carol, you have your hand up. Can I give you the floor here? Carol.
Yes, thank you. Moi, je voulais juste signaler ici aussi, dans ma pratique, c'est très souvent le cas où ce n'est pas la même personne qui a fait le cours et qui l'enseigne. C'est d'ailleurs en réalité tous les cours qui sont montés dans notre établissement sont montés en fonction de ça, parce qu'il y a toutes les chances pour que ça arrive. Ce que moi j'ai essayé depuis quelques années, et je ne peux pas encore dire si ça fonctionne réellement ou pas parce que le test n'est pas depuis suffisamment longtemps, c'est que j'installe systématiquement ce que j'ai appelé un site du formateur. C'est-à-dire il y a un site dans lequel j'indique tous les visées du cours, j'explique chacune des évaluations, j'explique c'est quoi l'idée de base du cours, vers quoi on veut aller, c'est quoi les compétences qui doivent être, les compétences visées, etc. De sorte que le professeur qui va enseigner peut aller dans ce cours-là. S'il prend un petit 2 heures, il va comprendre totalement l'essence du cours, l'idée du cours, la vision du cours, et il peut à ce moment-là beaucoup plus facilement suivre l'ensemble parce que généralement, une interface comme ça, un système d'apprentissage, c'est quelque chose qui est complet, dont tous les parties interinfluencent l'autre. Donc, en comprenant mieux de quoi il s'agit, dans quoi il s'embarque, en comprenant mieux l'ensemble du cours plutôt que chacune des parties, habituellement, le professeur s'y retrouve mieux. Comme je l'ai dit au début, je viens de commencer ça fait seulement quelques années. On n'a pas suffisamment vu comment ça fonctionnait, mais ce que je peux dire, c'est que même pour les professeurs qui ont fait le cours eux-mêmes, même lorsqu'il s'agit des experts de contenu qui donnent leur propre cours, moi, ce que j'ai entendu à date, c'est qu'ils appréciaient beaucoup parce que, évidemment, ils ne l'ont pas enseigné depuis un an et demi, et ils ont probablement oublié beaucoup de choses. Et en revoyant ça, ça les remet sur la track et ils peuvent finalement mieux suivre le cours. Alors, c'est tout ce que j'avais à dire. Merci.
Thank you, Carol. I agree completely that training the person who's going to be teaching it in the course is absolutely critical. We do that as well, and for, I would say, 85 to 90% of the time. That 10% of the time that for one reason or another that instructor does not get trained in the course and is perhaps someone who's come on very late and at the last minute and training hasn't been possible due to time restraints, that person generally finds the course much more difficult, and there's usually more problems with the course without that training. So I agree completely with you. There's another question here in the chat. Sonia is asking, what can be done when a facilitator used to face-to-face training environment is reluctant to transition to distance education? Oh, that's tough. A lot of talking and a lot of listening as to why that person, first of all, is reluctant. What is it that's bothering that person? Is it using the technology that's bothering them, if that's what it is? Is it just simply doing something completely different? Is it being separated from their students? So the first step in that one is doing a lot of talking to the individual to see if you can pin down what aspect of it is really bothering that particular person. One of the things that I find that produces very high anxiety is the use of the technology. And one way to make the technology more comfortable for them is to have them come and observe somebody else teaching. So one of your expert teachers. See if that person would be willing to mentor your reluctant person, and have them come in and watch and listen and see what that particular person is doing. Having them talk to others who are experienced in it and who are comfortable with it and enjoy doing it often really helps. One of the things that I know concerns a lot of face-to-face teachers is that they feel they're not going to have the same kind of interaction with their students once they move to a distance kind of a format. I've taught in both formats myself, and because I have taught in both formats, that does help when I'm working with a content specialist, because it gives me credibility with it, because I can say, when I did this, this happened, or when I did that, and that really helps them to feel a bit more confident that you're not just talking about something that you've observed, but something that you've experienced. And one of the things that I tell them is that I often have much more one-on-one interaction with students in a distance course than I ever did with students in a face-to-face class. They come to classes, they go home, and you don't hear from them again till next week. But the distance courses are constantly emailing you, they're talking to you, and I find that I get to know them as individuals more. So having them work with an experienced teacher as a mentor, where they can actually see what's happening, where they can experience it. Perhaps they would be willing to work as a TA for a while to try an experience with a distance course without fully being responsible for it. Things like that help. But again, it comes back to talking to your content specialist, listening to them, and finding out what it is that's bothering them about making that transition. Does that help, Sonia? Are there other questions?
Gilles, est-ce que tu voulais prendre la parole?
Someone spoke, but I'm not sure who. Oh, Hélène. There's Hélène. Her hand is up. Okay, Hélène, please proceed.
Thanks. As we're saying, it appears that most of the transition to online courses are, it's often not the choice of the person to do it. So that's the context is always, well, the administration have decided that such and such courses will suddenly be given online, or so how can we best explain that there is an advantage, or do you think we have to bring the whole picture of online learning to help everybody get on board with the fact that there is a tendency to go towards those approach in higher education? And also, how do we address the critiques that these are just administration administrative decision, and it's all about saving money. So those are like maybe down to earth aspect, but because most of the people content specialists end up doing that because the administration asked them for it. What would be your approach to describe the fact that there is a demand, and it's not only for, you know, for budget control that courses go online? Thank you.
Yeah. I know exactly where you're coming from on that one. Yes. There's a whole bunch of approaches I take on that one. First of all, I'm sympathetic to the content specialist who's in that situation. Nothing diffuses an argument on that kind of thing quicker than you're acknowledging right away that, yeah, that you know, it could very well be true, and that yes, you understand how they feel about that situation, and that does make it tough. That said, though, I would spend quite a bit of time trying to persuade them as well that online education does have value, and what its particular merits are. In our case, and I'm assuming in your case too, these are academics, and there's all kinds of interesting research out there on the values of distance education, and on its spread, and the fact that if we don't get into this fairly quickly, we are going to be left behind. And so apart from being sympathetic and understanding their position and that kind of thing, then I usually hit them where they live with their own with research, and give them as much, well, not too much, but some really good articles for them to read that are peer reviewed and that have credibility, that have academic credibility for them to read. And I find that really helps. If you hit them in their own area with their own research, with their particularly if you can find some in their own field, I find that really helps to persuade them that this is the way to go, and that they really need to get on board. The other thing I do is talk to them about the students as well, and how the student is changing now, that students aren't full-time students anymore, that they're part-time students, that they can't afford to go to university full-time. And they will have seen this with their own students as well, and that we really do need to move to more flexible means of delivery to be able to reach all of these students. The other tack I also take with them is that when they're working in a face-to-face classroom, they get 20, 30, or however many are in their particular class. If it's the first year, I suppose it could be several hundred students. They can reach that many, but that's the number that they're limited to. But if they move online, that's going to expand their influence to students significantly. So there's lots of ways that you can address the issue with them, and I would go at them from as many different angles as possible. But I usually start with sympathy, empathy, and understanding, and then move into the research and the other reasons as to why we really should do this. An example of an article, Sylvie. Right now, off the top of my head, I don't have a particular example, but I'll see if I can come up with something and send it off to Carol. Okay, I'm looking to see if there's anything else in the chat. Okay, other questions? Oh, there's Hélène, your hand is still up. Do you have something else? No. Okay, are there other questions? Oh, Carol, your hand is up. Carol?
Yes, bonjour. Bon, peut-être un petit commentaire sur ce qui vient juste d'être dit. pour ce que ça vaut. Personnellement, dans ma pratique, ce que j'essaie aujourd'hui, je ne le faisais pas il y a 6 mois à peine, mais aujourd'hui, ce que je fais, c'est que je leur parle automatiquement, pas automatiquement, mais je vais aborder tout de suite l'exemple que aujourd'hui, la communication, ça se fait par Internet dans la vie quotidienne. Et essentiellement, l'enseignement, c'est une... je ne veux pas entrer dans trop de détails, mais l'enseignement, c'est beaucoup de la communication. Qu'on le voit de n'importe quelle façon, c'est de la communication. Donc, aujourd'hui, le moyen de communication, c'est définitivement Internet. Tout passe par là. Et c'est juste normal d'être dans ce genre d'entourage-là, encore une fois, pour être dans le même, parce qu'on est en principe supposé enseigner avec le principe du situated cognition. So, on devrait utiliser des outils qui sont pertinents dans la société actuellement, et c'en est un. Mais c'était juste une petite note par rapport à ce qui venait de se dire. Je voudrais surtout poser une question à Cheryl. Et je ne serai pas très, très claire dans ma question, je te préviens. Je voulais savoir, dans un premier temps, je ne sais pas si si tu connais les travaux de Cathy Campbell, Richard Schweer, quelque chose comme ça, et Richard Kenny. Le titre, c'est Transforming Higher Education Agency of the Instructional Designer. C'est un document extrêmement intéressant à propos justement du rôle des concepteurs pédagogiques. Et j'ai une petite question parce que dans ce document-là, on essaie de décrire les difficultés, qu'est-ce qui se passe réellement dans le courant de l'activité professionnelle des concepteurs pédagogiques. Et on parle des agencies, et je le dis en anglais parce que je n'ai pas de terme français pour le dire ça, et j'arrive difficilement à comprendre de quoi on veut parler exactement. Mais une chose que je trouve intéressante là-dedans, c'est qu'on parle beaucoup des interpersonal agencies. Et je pense que d'une façon ou de l'autre, l'interaction interpersonnelle entre le concepteur pédagogique et l'expert de contenu joue pour beaucoup et de plusieurs façons. Il y a une relation professionnelle, mais il y a aussi une relation personnelle ou interpersonnelle qui arrive. Et je pense que ça, c'est un élément, à mon sens, qui n'a pas été suffisamment étudié encore, mais qui est certainement une composante importante dans toute la relation qu'on va avoir avec un concepteur pédagogique. Alors, je voulais avoir une idée si, Cheryl, qu'est-ce que tu en pensais et comment on peut comprendre un petit peu ce agency-là, si c'est possible.
I'm not sure I really understand the notion of agency either completely, Carol, but I do agree very strongly with your point about the relationship and that it's the importance of that relationship that happens between the content specialist and the instructional designer. And it's a relationship that promotes trust in each other so that you work effectively together as partners. And in many ways, it becomes more than just a professional relationship. It often becomes a friendship as well. So I agree completely with your point there, but I'm not sure that I can really answer the agency question, what they really mean by agency there, because I'm kind of at the same point that you are in that particular thing. I'm not sure I understand it at a level yet where I can coherently explain it. And Carol says she's
okay.
Reference on the ACCP site. That would be really helpful. Carol, it's 10:40. It's 10:49. I think my time is up, and it's probably Gilles' turn.
Exactly. Yes. Sorry, Cheryl. Yes, it's your, we should begin now with Jill. And anyway, thank you very much. And yes, there will be reference there, and we could continue that discussion elsewhere.
Thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Alors, bonjour à tous. Est-ce que je peux maintenant enchaîner? Alors, j'aimerais remercier Cheryl pour sa présentation. Je vais juste m'assurer que ma webcam soit activée pour que vous ayez l'occasion de mettre un visage sur le nom. Alors, voilà. Donc, un gros merci à toutes ces informations. Il y a bien entendu certains des éléments qui ont été, abordés que je vais reprendre avec. J'espère donc que vous jugerez que la présentation va s'avérer complémentaire à ce que on a pu discuter avec Cheryl. Donc, je vais mettre sur vos écrans la présentation qui s'intitule dans le fond, trier le bon grain de livret quand on travaille avec un expert matière. C'est un titre qui est un petit peu, c'est un clin d'œil parce que dans le fond, je ne pense pas que les experts matière avec lesquels on travaille ont nécessairement dans leur contenu de bonnes et de moins bonnes informations. Donc, c'est plutôt l'angle que je voulais prendre pour le titre, c'était simplement pour faire ressortir le fait qu'on a un travail de tri à faire avec notre expert matière parce que souvent, en tout cas dans ma pratique, ce dont je me rends compte, c'est que les gens sont très ambitieux par rapport à la quantité de contenu qu'ils veulent véhiculer. Et donc, on a un travail douloureux de faire des choix parfois déchirants avec eux pour amener le niveau de contenu en termes de quantité à une dose qui est assimilable et qui est conviviale pour les apprenants. Alors voici donc, je vous présente ma vision de ce qu'un expert de contenu, comment un expert de contenu voit